This story is called The Incompetent Thief. It's a Jewish story, and it's about a man named Yitzhak, who was very, very poor. He lived in a small shtetl, a small community, and he just couldn't make ends meet. The only thing he could think to do was to steal from people. The problem was he was no good at it. Whenever he tried to steal something from someone, they would beat him up. And at first he thought, I know what I'll do. I'll get some people to be in a gang with me and we'll rob them as a gang. That certainly is the problem. But they were almost as incompetent as he was. So whenever they as a group tried to steal from someone, they would all get beaten up as well. In fact, they'd be walking down the street and people would say, there they are, and they'd run over and beat them up and take their money. So it just wasn't working. He had an idea, though. He said, let's go rob from the highway. Because people in this village don't have any money anyways. Let's go off where the wealthy people ride in their carriages and we'll steal from them. The problem, of course, being that wealthy people carry guards with them. And so when they tried to rob their first carriage, they were beaten within an inch of their lives. It just wasn't working. But if there's one quality that Yitzhak had, it was that he was persistent. So he said, I noticed that up and down this highway, every now and then there's a little cart that goes by. And in that cart is an old rabbi and his disciples. And when they get to a village, what happens? The villagers come out and they ask him questions. They ask him to make a blessing. And for that, they feed him and they give him clothing and maybe even a place to stay. Let's try that. And one of his accomplices said, well, that sounds like a good idea, but you don't know anything. How are you going to answer questions or make blessings? And Yitzhak said, it's not an issue because they don't know either. I'll just make something up. So they found a cart and they found some old clothes and they headed into the next village. And sure enough, it was just like he predicted. People came out, they showered him with gifts, they showered him with food. And the mayor of the town came and said, would you be the guests at my mansion? And maybe you could make a blessing for us. And of course they said yes. They were ushered up into their rooms. They had fresh baths for who knows how long. They had a wonderful meal served to them in a great hall. And it was just amazing. He had finally figured it out. Now it was almost towards the end of dinner when the mayor said, you said you would make a blessing for me. And Yitzhak said, of course, what would you like? And the mayor said, my daughter is very ill. And I don't think she's going to make it through the night unless a great rabbi like you gives her a blessing to survive. Yitzhak's heart was pounding. He didn't know any such blessing. But the mayor ushered him upstairs with his accomplices in tow. And at the top of the stairs, there opened a door to this room with just a single candle burning in it and a young girl laying out on the bed, clearly close to the end of her life. And the mayor pushed Yitzhak into the room and closed the door. And at first it was silent. And then they heard weeping. And then they heard crying. And then they heard wailing. Yitzhak was wailing on the other side of the door, and they knew that she had died. And sure enough, he threw open the door. He came running out, his face streaming with tears, and ran down the stairs and out of the house. Following him was the daughter. She was cured. She ran into her father's arms, and oh, what an embrace it was. Well, his friends were stunned. They went running out after him, and they found him at the root of a big tree, just crying and crying and crying. And they said, Yitzhak, where did you learn to make such a prayer? And Yitzhak said, prayer? I didn't make any prayer. Well, you must have done something. She's cured. And he said, I didn't make a single prayer. I just raised my fist to God and said, what kind of a God are you that you should put the life of a young girl into the hands of a thief?